You're live, baby. You're live. You are live. You are live. You're live. You're live. Leave. Leave. That one. They're literally cloning you. Oh, really? Well, that's interesting. Racist carrot, huh? I see. Racist carrot. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. Mm-hmm. Bam. This page. What the fuck, you dumb motherfucker. Alrighty then. Some of this shit's kind of fucking interesting. Yeah. Sure, babe. Mm-hmm. I'm vegan, Walter.
Vegan, Walter? You had bacon.
So I'm a duck hound. I'm a street yacht. I basically get paid to travel around the world working for billionaires. From the Instagram and Snapchat stories, everyone seems to think that you've got the coolest job in the world. The reality of it is that you are clearing up rooms that have just had sex parties, orgies, prostitutes, coke residue on the tables the next day, veal or livestock so fresh that it actually gets flown in on a helicopter, is slaughtered on board, and served to the guest as fresh as can be. Unfortunately, it can sometimes get a bit seedy, a bit creepy with drunk people who think they can do whatever they want. These owners, these millionaires, these billionaires, they're incredibly powerful people, and a lot of the time they get their own way. Drug smuggling can go on in the industry. If people wanted to be moving, drugs and illicit substances, I reckon it'd be pretty easy to do. It's an incredibly secretive world, which no one really knows much about. The guests just use CP yachts as their little playground. They live in this little bubble where they think anything goes and anything can happen. These yachts are always pretty mad, particularly the larger ones. They will pretty much always contain a pool or some sort of hot tub, equipped with a gym. Some of them have cinemas, some of them have their own spas, helidecks, and will store a helicopter on board. The cost of these yachts can exceed anywhere of like £500 million. I think some of the most expensive charter yachts on the market at the moment can actually cost $4 million a week. You do always secretly know that the people you're working for haven't always done the best things in their lives. I've received job offers for the owner of a boat who is one of the most notoriously corrupt people on the planet. And during the job interview, the chief officer actually asked me, am I morally okay with who this person is and what he's done? And you kind of just have to ask yourself, am I okay with this? The expectations of the guests are pretty much whatever they ask for, we can deliver to them. as the day tends to go on and more alcohol that gets consumed, their expectations go up and our ability to deliver goes down. Sexual harassment definitely does go on in the industry. You do hear quite a few stories which make the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. There is a sexual element to the job 100%. It's a very superficial industry that a lot of blokes will only hire on the way you look and what waist size you are, what chest size you are, etc. I think they can forget that you're here for work, you're not here to be violated in any way. The victims of these cases are paid off. They're told to keep their mouths shut in order for their bonuses or perks. It gives the people this right to think that they can get away with anything. There have been a few serious incidents in CT yachting that have gone wrong and actually led to fatalities. One of the most famous ones in the industry was actually a anchor chain coming loose. The chain spun around in what's called the mooring bay, which is the forward section of the boat called the bow. The chain spun around and actually took the leg off one of the officers, and unfortunately he bled to death and died. Basically, you've just got to stay really switched on at all times, which can be a big part of the reason why working in the industry can make you so violent and down. I did a pretty long stint working on a charter boat. It was nearly 130 days of season, back-to-back charters, and within that time we only had one day off. At the end of that, when I actually left that boat, I felt like I was ready to leave the industry because it was just killing me, essentially. You can burn out really quickly, and you can look at guys who are, they've been in yachting for 10 years or so, and they look pretty weathered. Their skin's destroyed by the sun. The lack of sleep has just fucked them over, and it can really have quite a physical effect on your body, and it's pretty visible. The reason that we're so busy is because obviously we only have a certain number of crew cabins on board. You're always in a cabin of 2, if not 4, on some bigger boats, if not 6 on some super large ones. Cabin fever is definitely a real thing. You can feel cooped up like a caged animal sometimes, and personal space becomes a serious issue. Working in yachting definitely teaches you a lot of mental fortitude. You work very long hours with little rest, and that teaches you how to be resilient and just kind of push on through. Obviously, there are some negative effects on your mental health. I don't really understand the mindset of a billionaire, but when a lot of money is involved, it changes people, and I think it always brings out the worst in a lot of people's personalities.
Fiverr freelancers do all my social media marketing.
Yeah, all I did was log on.
I would basically just come in, find out what my target is for the day, press the button, just go, and the first piece of content, boom, it's just there on the screen in front of you. You take a look, you make a decision, you press a couple of buttons, it goes away, and the next one loads, and the next one, and the next one. And you are seeing dead bodies and murders, or people celebrating having killed somebody, dogs being barbecued alive. And you are seeing these images. It took me a long time to understand how much this stuff had affected me. I never even believed in PTSD. I thought it was just people being useless. And it's been very hard for me to find these really difficult emotional reactions when I talk about this stuff. I've had to be through therapy and take a lot of time just working on myself to get through this. I used to work for Facebook, and my job was to spend 8 hours a day looking at all the worst things that people post online so that you don't have to see it. Mark Zuckerberg had just announced he wanted to hire thousands and thousands more people to do this work. And I think they just needed bums on seats. So I was snapped up. They did ask me, you do understand that maybe occasionally you might see something that's a bit disturbing, and they ask if you're okay with that. But you don't have any experiential understanding of what that means. It's really difficult to quantify how much of it was of a particular type or how extreme it was. You would be able to quantify this, but these numbers are not available. Facebook have them. But as an employee, you're not entitled to find out what kind of harmful material you've been exposed to. I'm going to guess it's between 5 and 10% of what you see every day is possibly, potentially traumatizing. I can remember the first one that just was like a wow moment, and that was when we first started. I got this one day, and it's a super close-up shot of a man just jerking off. But I didn't want to reach forward, put my hand into that space to press the buttons to delete it. And eventually one of the girls did it. And then she picked up, there was a packet of wet wipes on another desk for cleaning the desk. And she cleaned all the desk, the keyboard, and her own hands before she went back to her desk. Thinking about that later, I realized that we really do feel touched by what you see. And then a couple of weeks later, one of my colleagues got his first self-harming incident where somebody is cutting their wrist and seemed to be in imminent danger of committing suicide. We just heard this like shouting, this guy just shouting like, "Fuck, what do I do? I've got a suicide, what do I do?" And he was in a complete panic because there's a life at risk right in front of him, right there and then. And your job is to protect people. Well, the guidelines are not guidelines. They're very, very strict, very precisely written rules. We've got definitions of harm versus injury versus violence. We've got clear definitions of what is hate speech and what isn't hate speech. Your head is swimming with all of these issues and things that you have to consider every time that you're confronted with this stuff. I think it would be easier to deal with the images if you weren't having to think about them so deeply. I worked the evening shift, so I would start at 6 p.m., finish at 2 o'clock in the morning. But then you would often wake up 3-4 hours later, you'd suddenly sit up in bed, remembering a decision that you've made and realizing that you've made a mistake. Like, I've missed a nipple. You remember some image that you'd seen and you suddenly realize that there was a naked girl on one side or an ISIS flag in the background. So now it should have been deleted under the terrorism policy. So you're obviously replaying this stuff in your head unconsciously while you're asleep. But then you're not allowed to talk about your work with anybody. We've all signed non-disclosure agreements, the Facebook omerta. We've all been told again and again, don't ever tell anybody what your job is. There was a wellness team on site, and they were responsible for resilience training and mental health issues, but they're not trained psychotherapists, psychologists, they're not mental health professionals. So you're at work and you get an email coming around saying, "Hey, we're having finger painting in the canteen this evening. I'm here to save the world. I'm looking at war crimes and child abuse. I haven't got time to go and go finger painting." So it was window dressing. The supports that were there were totally inadequate. For me, there was a creeping awareness and a loss of faith, a lot of hope, and it's just become this mindless drudgery where you've desensitized yourself from what you're seeing on the screen in front of you. But when I left, I was just relieved, and then I got a phone call from a journalist. Somebody had given them my number, and she wanted to talk to me off the record like this about the job. And she asked me these questions that you've been asking me about the content, the stuff that you see. And it was the first time I had addressed that I faced it. And it completely overwhelmed me. I broke down and cried in a coffee shop. I was lost. I just didn't know what the fuck I was doing, what was going on. I was totally bewildered. As I started to get my head around it and talk to specialists and doctors and people, I realized that this job had knocked me on my arse and I hadn't even realized it. Facebook denies that anybody could ever get PTSD. Nobody has been harmed. That's very explicit. And then there was a recording. Somebody actually taped what Mark Zuckerberg was saying in an internal meeting with employees last year. And Mark Zuckerberg said it's a little bit over dramatic. He just totally just dismissed all of the criticisms that have been made. It's denial. They don't want to know what's going on. And they'll say the right things, they say things that sound good, but they don't fucking care. And Mark Zuckerberg, I don't care what he's been told by other people, These stories have been repeated enough times now that he needs to go down onto the shop floor and see how people work day in, day out, see what's happening, and talk to people who've been harmed, and embrace the fact that he's got a problem he needs to solve.
Oh my god.
Say hi to Grandma. Not what you expected? You're still winning when you wake up with Thomas's.
In 2017, Facebook announced it would expand the number of people it had working on safety and security to 30,000, 15,000 of which would be content moderators. Content moderation is a really difficult job. You have to take Facebook's policies, which can change every day, and then apply them to decide what stays up on Facebook and Instagram and what comes down. A couple of months ago, I was contacted by some moderators who worked for Facebook in Tampa, Florida, through a company called Cognizant, and they told me that they wanted to go on the record. Now, this is a really big deal. Everyone who works for Cognizant signs a lengthy non-disclosure agreement in which they pledge not to talk about the work that they're doing. But the moderators who I met in Florida told me that they wanted to tell their story to the world so that we all could understand what it's like to do this job day to day and about the long-term mental health consequences of policing the biggest social network in the world.
But I made it. What? I went to be dumpster, but I made it. I was coming back from I got stuck at the light at fucking on Argonne and on Argonne and fucking yeah, the old 7-Eleven.
Yeah.
Fucking the light went and it didn't go. So like fuck this shit. So I drove up on the sidewalk, went around, yeah, I got up on fucking Argonne something else. There's 2 cars with the cops went right by, and they turned and went somewhere else. I was like, cool. And then there's 2 more doing something else over here. Like, cool. That's nice.
I thought it would be a fun job.
So I got weed shit in the back. I don't know.
What did they tell you the job was going to be like?
Basically, they told me that I would be going on to like high-profile social media accounts, such as like Disney World or like Orlando, and I'd be doing kind of like some data searching, like seeing what types of posts most people react to, and they comment to, and like to.
At what point did it become clear to you that you weren't going to be helping businesses on Facebook?
Probably the second or third day of training. And basically, we had an outline of what we were doing, and none of it was business. It was graphic violence, hate speech, sexual solicitation, sexual exploitation, that kind of stuff.
So they told you, we're going to put you in a queue of content that is dedicated to graphic violence and hate speech.
Yes, you would get the occasional random thing, but for the most part, it was always graphic violence and hate speech because that's all that was coming in first.
Did anybody ask you about your mental health before they assigned you to that queue?
Nobody ever asked about my mental health there. Nobody said anything about mental health.
What were like some of the kinds of things that you would see that would be really hard for you?
Where do I start? Animals, mostly animals, abusive animals. I've seen them had a puppy with a rope hanging it, and I've seen a pit of pigs, and they threw fire, and you can hear the pigs screaming. I don't want to get emotional talking about the animals.
There was one where there was a baby they were twin babies from like Saudi Arabia, and the mother was dropping the baby on the ground. This is one we saw over and over again, and then choked the baby, and you hear the baby gurgling and trying to breathe. And for days, it infected my mind. I had to know what happened to this baby because I'd seen it over and over and over again. Luckily, the baby was okay.
Sorry. I just think about all the animals all the time. And that's what I'm still thinking about, even though I left.
Do you remember the first video that you saw?
It was a video in a different language, and it was these two teenagers, and they came across an iguana on the street. And one of the kids grabbed the iguana by the tail, and they started to smash the iguana onto the ground. And you could just hear the iguana screaming. And that was one of the
I don't want to watch this fucking shit. I can't watch that fucking shit, dude. Fucking people suck, dude. Why the fuck did I watch that shit? Whoa. Bubba! Bubba! What are you doing out there, honey? What are you doing out there, baby guy? You safe out there with Scott? Scott watching you? I hope he was watching you.
क्या कह रहे हो मुझे ये बताओ। आप मुझे अच्छी लगती हैं, क्या मुझसे शादी करेंगी? क्या हो गया भाई, इधर मजाक करो, बात करो, कैमरा लगाया हुआ है। अस्सलाम वालेकुम, वेलकम टू आवर न्यू वीडियो। मैं हूं मेहरान और आज गल्फ शॉपिंग मॉल 3 तल
Humanitarian aid is about reaching out to save lives, reduce suffering, and support human dignity in times of crisis. Getting help to people in critical need is usually difficult, always challenging, occasionally impossible. The 4 humanitarian principles emerged after the Second World War to make sure that we can get help to those who need it, whoever they are, and whatever the challenges involved. Humanity is a simple but fundamental idea that we should respond to human suffering